So welcome to session 2. I hope you enjoyed the first session. So the first session was, what is it all about? Why get married? Was the purpose of marriage is what we were trying to answer. And the 5 main things we came up with was family, friendship. You're gonna have to help me, yeah.
Sexuality, recreation, and what was the second one? Maybe you guys can remind us. I said sexuality already. Just say it in order. Friendship, sexuality, family, recreation. Anyway, you guys remember gardening. That's it, gardening. So yeah, basically what we covered is that the purpose of marriage is not to be happy. And 98% of couples will answer the question, why did I get married? I got married to be happy. And that is a fail. So that's what we chatted about on Wednesday. If you missed that session, welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. We're so excited to have you. Then please go back down on the Facebook page and you'll see the video there. We also sent out some notes today on that on Wednesday's session, as well as some really nice questions that will help get conversation going between you and your spouse around those topics. So if you didn't get those and you would like them, won't you just send me an email on lindsay@citygatechurch.co.za, and that's Lindsay, Lindsay. And then we can get those through to you. But today we've got an exciting topic.
Yes. Before we go into that, I need to clarify something. So we threw out in the sexuality part of the conversation last week the 10-day challenge. So whoop whoop. I don't see any bell icons yet. So
There is no bell icon.
I know there's no bell icon. But one of the very excited individuals came to me and said, are they allowed to complete it in one day? So I was like, no. You can't complete the 10-day challenge in one day. It has to be 10 consecutive days. And then I had my other brother from another mother who came and said, his wife's not on the program with him. So we were like, actually, buddy, you got to get her on the program. You got to do all the right stuff. Remember, it's her before you.
And just for those of you who might be thinking, what the heck is the 10-day challenge? The 10-day challenge is intimacy, sexual intimacy, every night for 10 days in a row, or every day if you have time in the day for 10 days in a row. So that's the 10-day challenge, and that's what we've been having fun with now. So the idea is that over the next while, we reignite our intimate relationship, we spend time on it, we spend time focusing on you before me, wooing our husband, wooing our wife, and really making an effort in that area. Can we go on now, Sean? Okay, so we can start. So today we're going to talk about 12 habits that lead to the breakdown in marriage. Now, you might be expecting some amazing words of wisdom from us, but some of these are pretty plain and simple, but sometimes we forget about them, and they can creep in like little foxes, and we know what little foxes do. They ruin the garden, they ruin the crops. So we're just going to dive in. We're going to chat, like we said on Wednesday. Sean and I are going to chat on the couch. We're going to chat with you. If you have any questions, put them down. But while we're in the bulk of the talk, it's a little bit difficult for us to follow the comments. But we will go to them at the end and have a look at your questions from there. So our first habit that we feel and have definitely noticed causes breakdown in marriage is constant criticism. So this is pretty average. It's not like science, this one. It's pretty normal. Constant criticism is going to wear down your marriage. But a tone of constant criticism in a marriage really starts to break down your relationship. And what we're talking about is just that constantly picking out the things that irritate you or frustrate you about your husband or your wife, instead of being your wife or your husband's biggest encourager and biggest fan.
Yeah, so that's, I think, in the context of us, is one of the things that often creeps in. And it's actually one of the areas where I actually thrive on words of encouragement. So I love it when Lindsay's encouraging to me, but Lindsay likes to get things done. She likes the task getting done. And if the tasks don't get done, I get reminded about them often and remember when that didn't happen. But the most amazing thing happened even the last 2 years is one of the areas where Lindsay said, you know what, this is a fox in terms of her and her makeup that she's going to work on. And she has gone out of her way to not do that in our home. And I must say, it's been the most amazing transformation in our home when there's this I know that it's irritating her. So deep down inside, I'm like, okay, she's been kind enough not to say anything or criticize about it. I'm going to go and get it done just before that moment does happen or she explodes.
You'll often find that if you were asked to write a list of traits, your spouse's traits, and you're asked to write a positive list, what are the positives and what are the negatives? Sometimes it's so easy to write that negative list and it can go on and on and on for days, that page. And that is just a sign that we can get overwhelmed and focus in on the negatives instead of the positives. And if we constantly that dripping tap in our spouse's life, it can start to wear down our relationship. So what we're suggesting is that we have this in our minds. Don't be constantly criticizing. Like we said on Wednesday, it's not our job to change our spouse. It's our job to change ourselves. So rather than constantly criticizing, let's be encouragers. Let's build up, because this is something that can really deteriorate marriages quickly.
On the light of that, I was thinking about the other day. It's like a new couple just about to get married, and you think about it like, so, like, have you noticed anything? It's like, no, they're perfect. They're absolutely perfect. And you look at them saying,
just wait.
Just wait, buddy. First year, probably decent, and then thereafter that is just all the negatives start rolling out. And that's what we were saying even last week. It's that thing of two broken individuals coming together doesn't make a whole individual. And the longer we spend time together, the more we get to learn about our partner, the good stuff and the bad stuff. And the trick is to not criticize those bad things, is to rather give them the grace and time to work on those things. We can talk about it and definitely communicate our frustrations, but definitely give them time to work on those things as opposed to criticizing.
Yeah. So first, bad habits, constant criticism. Number 2 is dividing everything into his and hers. And we actually covered a little bit about this on Wednesday as well. But marriage is designed to bring us together and bond us. And often we can get into habits where we are doing things that are separating us. We want to avoid things that separate us. So we're talking about separate finances, separate hobbies, separate dreams, separate friends. When we start to separate our lives like that and live our own lives within our family, it becomes dangerous ground. I think that especially around the things of hobbies, often if a husband and wife have completely different hobbies, and actually Sean and I do have that, but if we are not getting involved in each other's hobbies or meeting the friends, Sean is really into running, he's got a lot of running group friends that he knows, it's up to me to get to know those friends, to get involved, to have those friends in our home, to get on the sidelines of the Comrades Marathon and cheer him on the way. So how can we bring ourselves into each other's hobbies, into each other's friendships, so that we don't land up living these separate lives? The more we separate from each other, the easier it is to start to live alone as opposed to together. We want to stay knitted together. We want to create that bond. Just on the topic of finances, Sean and I have actually recently, I've opened my own bank account, but before that we had a combined bank account. And I don't think what we're saying is that you have to have a combined bank account. You can have 2 separate bank accounts, but the kind of language we're wanting to avoid is my money and your money, and I get to spend my money on whatever I like, and you get to spend your money on whatever you like. Oh, and by the way, it's your debt, not my debt. But actually, we want to be saying it's our finance, it's our money. How are we going to spend our money, and how are we going to deal with our debt? And making those decisions together rather than separating them and doing them on our own.
I was definitely a big culprit in this one for most of my marriage, where I would just decide what to do, and I'd have my own mission, and I was always have a whole bunch of missions that I'm on, and sort of Lindsay would just have to get behind and do it. And it was one of the big things I had to change. So even in the stuff I want to do now, the question I got to ask myself is this pulling us together, or is this pushing us apart? And that's really the heart of this question about dividing his and hers. Is what I'm doing pushing us away or pulling us together? And that's not to say you can't do anything that you enjoy or you like, but doing it together is very simple. Is if I want to run the Comrades, I want to go run another stupid 100-mile or something like that, is having the conversation with my spouse and saying, are you happy if I do this? Are you happy? I mean, this is what it's going to take in terms of training, and
It's now a good time.
is now a good time for us to do this, and we do it together. So she's on board with me, even though she might not necessarily be out every single day with me. So yeah, the heart around this question, dividing his into hers, is are we working and operating together or separately? Maybe a funny story is in the early days, and I think Lindsay used to do it as well. I was brilliant at buying fishing equipment when I was into it, and I knew I could buy any new fishing equipment, rods, reels, and Lindsay would not know the slightest if I did or didn't. And for Lindsay, I have no clue what her clothes look like, even though she wear them all the time. She could go and buy into the shops, buy a whole bunch of clothes, and I'd have absolutely no clue if she had bought new clothes or not. And the trick is even just behind that stuff. So let's not live secretive lives or separate lives. Let's bring even all those things into our marriage. So even if you have budgets where it's like you got a portion of the funds to spend on yourself, spend it and do whatever you want, but come back into your wife and say, hey, check what I bought, just to keep together in everything we do.
Awesome. So that's number 2. Let's try and not divide everything into his and hers. Number 3. This is a good biggie one. This is giving each other our leftovers. Wow. How often do we do that? And this is often what our families have to deal with is our leftovers, our children, our husbands, our spouses, our wives. That's what happens. And this can become a really bad habit that deteriorates our marriages, where we go off to work in the morning, we are looking the best that we can for the people at work, we are doing our jobs the best we can, we are so happy and lively and passionate in front of our friends, and we walk in the door at night and we just like, oh. And yes, there is a space of being able to be who you are in front of your family, but we need to be careful that we are not leaving the worst of us for our husbands or the worst of us for our wives. They deserve the best of us too. They deserve to see the things that make us thrive, that we love. They deserve to enjoy good times with us.
Yeah, another big thing is social media. Yes. So this definitely falls into this category where we get home, we're tired, all we want is some space to our own headspace. We get out the mobile and it's like, now it's my time. And we then again block ourselves from our spouses, so giving them the worst. And the only real time we connect is maybe while we're driving the kids to school or something to that effect. So just, yeah, in every area. Sorry? Most people, yeah, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, so just on the devices, we often talk about children and devices and how to keep our kids out of devices, but sometimes we need to talk about how to keep ourselves out of devices. And cell phones and computers and all these technical things that we have, YouTube and social media, can really become a serious drain on marriages. And it's really important for us to keep short accounts with ourselves and short accounts with our spouses. Don't bring the cell phone to the table. If you are having time with family, don't be on your cell phone while you're doing it. Something that I've really enjoyed that someone once taught me was how to divide your day into blocks or into sections, and to say, okay, this is family time. From this time to this time is my family time. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to look at my computer. I'm not going to, in the middle of my wife telling me her deepest, darkest, desperate part of her day, quickly have a look at what this person's WhatsApped me. But I'm going to engage and I'm going to give my full focus and attention. And it's really about being present. If you're going to make time for your wife or you're going to make time for your husband, be present. Do it well. Shall we move on? Yeah. Okay, yay. I read a quote, and I absolutely love this quote. I wanted to share with you. And it says, husbands, make your wife sad to see you go in the morning, and wives, make your husbands excited to come home. And that's really what we're talking about, that we want to part from each other, feeling, oh, I'm going to miss you, and come back together, excited to see each other. Right now, we're all spending a lot of time together, so it's all good. Okay, so number 4 happens often, especially for those of us who have small children, and it's seeing the happiness of our kids as a higher priority than the health of our marriage. And this can happen so easily. Yes, our job is to bring up our children, discipline them, and train them to be these amazing human beings who are going to contribute to society. But if we forget about this in that time, when they leave the house, there will be nothing. And we often see that when children leave the home, people often get divorced because there's now nothing left. The glue has gone that was keeping them together. And B, actually, the best thing you can give your children is a great marriage, is an example of a great marriage. And it's a mom and dad who love each other. So it's so important not to get into the habit of putting kids before ourselves.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And Yeah, going back to last week, just that thing around friendship, I think that's where this really sticks out for me is that are we constantly working on our friendship, even though we have hectic time with kids and hectic schedules, and we genuinely tired when we get home from work, but making space to have the deep conversations and building our friendship.
Yes. Okay, moving on. The fifth one, number 5, is holding grudges. Boy, oh boy, can holding grudges be a biggie in marriage? We can all do it. We all hold grudges on a good day, let alone a bad day. But holding grudges is a marriage killer. That's what we call it, the marriage killer. So we're all going to do something that's going to offend or irritate our spouse. Everybody, even the perfect husbands and wives out there, and even those who've been married for 2 minutes, it's coming, it's going to happen. And the key to a great and healthy relationship is forgiveness. And forgiveness is a big deal. It's really, really hard to do, but it is something that is possible. And it's not just forgiveness, actually. Not holding a grudge is forgetting as well. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, Lindsay, you don't understand. How on earth am I supposed to forget this? But that, if we can get into a habit of quick forgiveness, well, firstly, quick repentance, coming to our spouse, explaining what's happened, saying sorry for something that you may have said, keeping short accounts with them, being quick to ask for forgiveness, then being quick to forgive, and then forgetting what has happened is so vital to keeping our marriage alive. Do you want to say that?
Yeah, we heard this quote probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it really revolutionized our thinking around what forgiveness is. And really, it's forgiveness is forgetting. And the comment went something like this, and it was around parenting, and was, how would you discipline your child when they did something for the hundredth time, but you saw through the lens of it was the first time they did it? So let me repeat that. So they keep doing something, they come to you, they said sorry. How would you discipline them if it was the first time they'd done it? And I think the same in the marriage. True forgiveness is really when someone does battle with something but is genuinely sorry, that next time they do it, can we see it with the eyes of this is the first time this person has done it, and let me have full grace for them.
And I think just a bit of a disclaimer in this area is that we are not now saying that you are off the hook. So if you've done something, I'm going to use a silly example, like not taking the rubbish out every Monday, which is doesn't happen in our house anymore. But it's just a silly thing. Like if you haven't taken the rubbish out again another Monday, you are not, by me forgiving Sean for not doing it again is not letting him off the hook. There are consequences to behavior. And so those consequences are needing to be, adjusted. Yeah. But so we're not suggesting that we let people off the hook. What we're suggesting is that we get into a habit of being quick to repent. Well, firstly, watching what we say, how we speak, and focusing on ourselves rather than our spouse. Being quick to repent, and then being quick to forgive, and not remembering and holding grudges about what our spouse has done. And so not letting off the hook. There's still consequences to behavior, and there's still adjustments that we have to make. If you're in a pattern of doing something that really is not working for your spouse and is causing grief in your relationship, you need to work on not doing it anymore. Then you need to come to some kind of, what's the word? You need to together decide how are we going to rectify this, and there needs to be some definite change in behavior. Okay, number 6. Number 6 is, this one for me is huge. I love number 6, and if we can get number 6 right, then I think we are set on a great path. And number 6 is trusting your feelings more than your commitments. Yeah. Oh my gosh, just let it sink in for a little bit. Trusting your feelings more than your commitments. And I read once this line. I'm going to read it to you so I don't say it wrong. Feelings were never intended to be our primary advisor in major decisions. What a light bulb moment. Feelings were never intended to be our primary advisor in major decisions. And if we use feelings as a cue for decisions we make in our marriage. We are on a slippery path to a dangerous place. We cannot rely on our feelings. Today, there are days, not today we're having a good day, but there are days when I feel very irritated with Sean, when I don't like him. And if I made a major decision for our marriage based on that feeling, there would be big drama in our house. So we have to make decisions on our commitments. And our commitments, ladies and gentlemen, was made whatever many years ago on the day that you stood before your husband or your spouse and God, and you committed to love that person for the rest of your days until either of you died. And that is the commitment we make decisions on. We use our heads and not our feelings, or I'm not going to say hearts, because this is not a heart thing. This is a feeling thing. It's a in the moment, how am I feeling right now? Feelings lead to adultery. Most cases of adultery start with a feeling. I acted on a feeling. I didn't think about the commitment. I didn't think it through. And often you'll see spouses who have committed adultery move in and make that mistake, and then, oh flip, I actually really love my wife, or I really love my husband. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I want to be with you. Because they made the decision based on a feeling.
Yeah, this is such a key one. I remember, I can't remember when it was, but I was personally going through a really rough time. I was really tired, and just everything in life was irritating me, including the marriage. I remember the cue for me as I was going away to a race, and I was excited to leave, which was quite a
don't understand why.
But that is the truth. I was excited to leave and go. It was the Three Cranes race, so you get away for 3 days uninterrupted, running on the trails, which is beautiful. And just that feeling alone that I felt, I was quite grieved by it. Like, why on earth am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling glad? And I started on that run just trying to like go through my head and think like, what's going on? And I really felt like God spoke to me the one day where he just downloaded this question. And what is your choice? That's really what he asked me. What is your choice? What do you want to do? I was like, what do you mean? What do you want to do? He said, are you going to choose to love her, or you're not going to choose to love you? You make the decision. And I remember at that moment, just remembering exactly this, that love is a choice. It's not about how I'm feeling. In my worst place, in my worst moment, where I'm feeling tired and broken and abused, I can still, at that point, turn around and say, regardless of how I'm feeling, I am going to choose to love my spouse. And I remember that exact moment. I got back in my tent, and I messaged Lindsay, and I just sent, obviously, a massive apology, and just saying, you know what? I love you, I choose you, and I choose to work for this marriage over and over.
Awesome. I just wanted to read one line that I wrote down here, and it's because it just is so good. So feelings often lead to adultery, but using your head and standing on your commitment leads to flourishing, happy marriages. So using our head and standing firm on our commitment leads to happy and flourishing marriages. Right, number 7. I'm getting through these quite quickly. Number 7 is making decisions without consulting your spouse. Oh my goodness. How many fights have been around something like this? Or how many arguments or disappointments have been around something like this, where your spouse has just gone and done something without even bothering to ask you how you thought about it? This is a habit that can really cause drama. And sometimes you don't even realize. You've just gone and made a decision, and you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, why are you freaking out? I just chose the purple pillows. But there are some, and you will know your spouse, there are some things that they will want to be included in. Before you make decisions, consult your spouse first.
And along these lines, I think to throw in, there's also holding back truth. I think so often we do that, where whatever it might be, a small thing, a big thing, we don't tell the whole story. So we hold back some of that story, and then they ask, and then you maybe try, flip, if I tell her that, she's going to be upset. So we hold back that story. In essence, what we start doing is creating a circle of lies. So we start lying about the small little things in our lives, and nothing is worth it. It's so much easier just to be fully truthful, regardless of the consequences. And there's grace in those moments. But what causes mistrust is when I haven't told her something and she finds out about it, and then, why didn't you tell me about that in the story? Oh, I thought you wouldn't mind, or whatever the things we throw out. And I think we all can slip into doing this is just holding back some of the things. Let's just be fully truthful in our marriages, regardless of the cost, because that's what builds trust, being truthful. What breaks down trust is being found out about anything.
Definitely. Okay, number 8 is trying to change each other. And we chatted a bit about this on Wednesday. That's that whole concept of me before you. It's not our job to change our spouse. And actually in our heads, we all know this. We've heard it before. It's nothing new. It's not a rhema word from heaven, this. But it's something that we can slip into. We just want to tell him again about that little irritating thing that he does. But if I don't tell him, how will he know, Lindsay? How will he know? And then we get into this habit of trying to constantly change each other. And all it does is it deteriorates because we spend so much time looking at the negatives, we forget the positives. And the glue between us starts to come away again. I always tell my kids, you get what you get and you don't get upset. When you got married, you got what you got, and now it's time not to be upset about it. As long as we are working in our marriages for each other, I'm working to make Lindsay better for Sean, and Sean is working to make Sean better for Lindsay, then we are well on our way to having a great marriage and to flourishing together.
And this point also speaks quite big into identity. And this is another thing that's come recently into our lives, is this thing of self-identity and understanding yourself and saying, you know what, the only person who can change me is me. And the most significant changes in your life is when you sit down and say, okay, my wife is irritated about a whole bunch of things, or these people, even might be workplace, that are pointing things out inside of you, is to sit down and stop blaming and saying, oh, it's them, or it's this, or it's that situation, and saying, defending yourself. Yeah, why is it that I'm behaving this way or doing what I'm doing? And start getting down to the roots of some of those things. So for me, I discovered I had actually quite a bad self-worth, and that thing was like playing itself out in my marriage. So I always had this sort of victim mentality or victim mindset. So whenever Lindsay was just trying to tell me something, it was like she was attacking me, or she was trying to point out that I'm bad. But really what I thought about myself was that I am useless. So every time she said something, it sort of continued me to believe and understand, think that lie of I am not good enough, until I brought that thing in and thought, like, actually, why do I think I'm not good enough? And really understanding that has had massive implications, positive implications into our marriage.
And just when we focus on I've written here, when we focus on we automatically change as we. So the more we look at ourselves and not at our spouse, we start to change together for the better. And number nine is planning an exit strategy. So the healthiest couples never say the D word. The D word is divorce. We don't ever talk about it. We don't ever use it in a big fight. Oh, let's just get divorced. Oh, I'm going to divorce you. It's something that should never come across our vocabulary. When we first wrote the notes for this course, or this session of the course, we called it 12 habits that lead to divorce. And then we decided, actually, we're not going to say the D word. We're not going to bring it up. It's something that doesn't ever get mentioned. So not having an exit strategy. This is it. We get what we get and we don't get upset. We signed up for this marriage and we have the opportunity to make it the best that it can be. We have the opportunity to make it flourishing and happy. And so exit strategies are bad habits. We can't be saying it. We can't be using it as a weapon against our spouse. And it should never be something that is said between us at all.
Yeah, and I think we are talking in general conversation here, generally healthy marriages. We're not talking about massive abuse. So that's a different story. And if there is massive abuse that is happening within the context of your marriage, go and see someone professional, chat with them. We're just talking about, in your everyday life, it's like, Flip, I'd be better off without you. And even planning an exit strategy can start in your mind. You start thinking like, hey, Flip, it would be better if I had my own place, or life would be so much easier if I wasn't married. And we start to think about the process of separating. So again, what we were saying earlier, that's pushing away instead of pushing into one another.
And even just little jokes, those ball and chain jokes and all those funny little jokes we love to say about marriage cliches, those kind of jokes shouldn't be in our vocabulary either. We shouldn't be talking like that about our wives or our husbands when they're not around. We should be our husbands and wives' biggest encouragers. When they're not there in front of us, when we're with a group of other people, we are loving them, we are building them up, we are explaining how wonderful it is to be with them and how privileged we are to be with them. Yeah, anything else on that one? Okay, number 10. Hey. Number 10 is hiding the fact that you are married. So, this is quite a big deal. And what we mean by hiding the fact that you are married is in any kind of circumstance. Maybe it's at work. It can be as purposeful as not wearing a wedding ring or even talking about the fact that you are married. Or it can be as simple and as just, having a very flirty conversation with someone at work. So you've said you're married, you've talked about your wife, but actually I'm quite enjoying this little flirty conversation we're having now. Those kind of things are a slippery slope to dangerous places, which we love to talk about. And it's really not a good idea to go there. The best, safest place for us to be is on the very other side of that. The line, there is a definite line. Don't go anywhere near the line. Stay far away from the line. And on this topic, I just wanted to share that we are human and we're sinful, and we may go to work and there might be a lady who's really pretty, or there might be a man who's actually asking something about you and your husband hasn't looked at you or asked you anything emotionally about yourself for ages, and you quite enjoy that conversation. We want to suggest and we want to ask that you go home and you tell your husband and wife about it. And this is something that we are really passionate about and has really been a number one thing for our marriage and saved us before, where if you find that all of a sudden there is something that could lead to adultery or could lead to emotional adultery, whatever it might be, that you go straight away and tell your spouse about it. Because where there is light, there can be no darkness. The minute we give darkness a foothold, the minute we open the door to the darkness, that becomes a slippery slope to dangerous places. So share, be honest, be vulnerable, be open with each other. Don't be offended or devastated when your husband comes and goes, oh my gosh, I saw this pretty girl at work today. Be so grateful that he's come and said it and that he is willing to protect your marriage.
Yeah, I think one of the things we have also noticed over the years is that no affair happens as a one-night stand. I'm not saying no, but I'm saying in general, it doesn't start there. What it's happened, it's actually been months and months of chatting in the office, having conversations, messaging each other, enjoying that emotional connection that they're having with one another. And then eventually it's a one-nighter. So what we're saying is don't even go down that road. For me, I don't message women messages and have massive conversations with them. Sometimes practically I have to send one thing here or there or whatever, but I don't build friendships and relationships with other ladies ever. And another thing is, and it's a very practical tip, is just to have your phone open. I don't have a lock on my phone. Lindsay can pick up my phone whenever she wants. She can scroll through my WhatsApps. She can scroll through my Facebook messaging. She's got my passwords to all that stuff. So at any stage, she's able to check that stuff. And for me, that's just being open and vulnerable with my wife, knowing that she knows everything I'm doing on my mobile device. Mobile device is a dangerous place.
Yes. And this thing again builds trust. The more open we are with each other, the more the bigger and the stronger the relationship, the trust relationship is. Okay, number 11. We're just going to briefly touch on this because we're going to have a whole talk about this. But number 11 is seeing porn as harmless entertainment. Sure. So, like we said, all infidelity usually starts in the mind. So porn is a great starter for that. Watching porn, reading erotic material, all those kind of things are a slippery slope in your mind to dangerous places. It starts there. It says in the scriptures, to look at a woman lustfully or a man is committing adultery. So we want to stay monogamous in our minds. And by watching porn and watching or reading erotica or watching movies that are below the belt, it deteriorates the relationship that you have with your wife and or your husband. And Sean has got a great thing around that.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm going to mention both romance books and novels and movies for the ladies, and for the men, obviously, pornography. And what it does is it creates a massive lie inside your brain as well. So for men, it over-sexualizes women and under-emotionalizes them. So what happens is people start asking questions then in their marriage. So why isn't my wife so sexual? Why is she so emotional all the time? So it creates this false sense. In actual fact, God has created Lindsay to be highly emotional, and she is under-sexual, but that is turned on when I meet her emotional needs. So when I'm meeting her emotional needs, then she becomes highly sexual. So pornography flips it. And then the same with romance stuff, is it makes men overly emotional and under-sexual. So again, they just have these flowers and roses, and they're driving with this, the rose in their mouth and landing at the lady, and she's just like, oh, and he's, no, I just drove here just to drop the flower, don't worry, and he carries on driving off. That's not what men are like. So men are highly sexual and under emotional. And again, this is a massive generalization in terms of men and women. But just in general, that is our makeup. I am definitely way more sexual, definitely way more under emotional.
Okay. And then
before you go, so we're getting on to our last topic now. So we do have about a 30-second delay on the feed. So if you do have any questions, you can start popping, or comments, you can start popping them on now, so that when we finish by number 12, we can just have a little look-see and try to keep a bit of a flow going.
So number 12, and this one for me is the number one relationship killer, and that is selfishness. And you'll see we keep talking about it over and over again in our times together, that whole thing of you before me, you before me. Selfishness kills relationships. Selfishness kills marriages. If it's all about you, we are in for trouble. It has to be about our spouse. It has to be about how we can build them up, how we can encourage them, how we can love them the best way that we can. I read a quote once that said, and I hope I get it right, choose to be the thermostat and not the thermometer. The thermostat sets the climate or tone, but the thermometer adjusts to the climate. So we want to set the tone in our house. We don't want to adjust to it. And we can do that by not being selfish, by giving ourselves up for our spouse. We're called to die every day for them, to die to ourselves over and over and over again. And what I love about this principle that Jesus has given us for marriages is that the more you die to yourself, the easier it is for your husband or your wife to die to their self. So you both land up having this beautiful relationship where you are constantly loving and encouraging each other while you work on your own self. That makes sense.
Yeah, this is absolute. I think this is probably mankind's biggest hurdle, is selfishness. I think it's one of those massive ones, and I think it's something we constantly working on in our own lives. I'm constantly looking at myself and saying, "Geez, I'm really selfish." But then why am I selfish? What is the need behind that selfishness? And really asking the question: so how can I be a whatever it might be to my spouse, or how can I be a whatever it might be to my kids? And what that comes with is self-sacrifice. But the most amazing thing is when you do that, your relationships with your kids come alive, your relationship with your spouse comes alive, and there's real reality in those relationships because of you laying yourself down for them. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, these are just 12 habits that we wanted to point out that so easily we don't see, and we can get into them very quickly. And what we'd love to suggest to you all today is that you spend some time over the next few days having a thought or think about these. We will send you the notes so you can read through them as well. Having a think about these different things and think, is this a problem in my marriage? Look at yourself. Is there something I need to change here? Have I been holding a grudge for the last 10 years? Is there something that I need to let go and forgive my husband or my wife for? Am I being selfish? Have I been starting to wonder what it's like on the other side of the garden? Is the grass greener over there? How am I going to get out of this? This marriage is devastating. I'm unhappy. And I would like to say, if you are in that category where you are feeling like there is no hope, I'm unhappy, I don't know what to do, please get some help. I mean, you're welcome to contact us. We aren't professional counselors, but we can put you in or direct you to somewhere or someone that can help you. But we are so excited that God is going to use us as we work on ourselves and give us happy, healthy marriages that are going to be amazing for our family and for future generations. Any questions?
Lovely. So if you guys do have any questions, I don't see any at the moment. Lindsay's going to check on her phone because it seems to be a little bit different. I'm just going to scroll up here. So if there's anything, we'll take questions. If not, we will call it quits here. So next time, what are we doing?
So Wednesday, next week Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, we'll be back on our couch again. And we've got some very interesting conversations for you. We haven't quite decided what we're doing on Wednesday yet, whether we're going to dive into sexuality or whether we're going to tackle one of our other topics. But we would love to see you back again. And if you would like to receive the notes and I don't have your email, please send me an email so I can send those through. There are also some nice little extras that we are sending through on the email as well. I think husbands, you will have received something today. I asked your wives not to open it, so I'm hoping that you've got it. If you didn't get it, let me know. Just a few little tips and things that you can do at home to start actively, practically seeing your relationship start to thrive.